Good morning, everybody. Bore da I chi a chroeso i'r seminar this morning that we're hosting. It's one of a series of several events that we've been running across Wales and indeed England, but this particular series is focused on Brexit. Thank you very much for joining. We've got well over 40 people attending. Out of our 3,000 members, it's pretty certain that the majority of you will in some shape or form be affected by some of the issues that we're going to be talking about today. Doesn't it just feel like we've been talking about Brexit for so many years, but clearly a huge decision will be made very soon about what the trade deals might look like with our biggest biggest partner in Europe and indeed across the rest of the world. Whether you're exporting vegetables, whether you're buying in goods and services, whether you've got sheep and the prices may well be affected, it's pretty certain that 2021 is going to be a significant year for you and indeed for all of us in Wales and across the rest of the UK. It's unsure exactly what things are going to look like at the moment. Welsh Government itself still has concerns about what the trade deals might look like, how things will operate. But what we're trying to do as part of this seminar is to provide some clarity and to put some certainty into what the decisions may look like. We can't promise to answer all your questions, but we do have a Q&A session at the end of the presentations where please feel free to, in the Q&A button, not the chat bar, but in the Q&A section, if you could please put your questions in there, we'll do our very best to answer any of your questions. I think really 2020 has been such a challenging year with COVID, hasn't it? And indeed, some of the other challenges we're facing, and 2021 will probably be just as uncertain. But with the range of speakers we've got this morning, we have Charles Trotman, our Senior Rural Affairs Advisor, who focuses on the economy and economics. Charles will attempt to set the scene for what Brexit might look like and how the trade deals may well operate. If I can introduce our other speakers, we have Maurian Jones, who is a hill farmer based in North Wales. Maurian has just around 1,000 hectares of ground, a mixture of heath and moorland, woodlands, hay meadows, breeding ewes, cattle. And I think, Maurian, what's really stands out from your perspective is that you've really tried to focus on running your core business, but also trying to go down the environmental improvements route. And clearly where the funding is going in that particular direction will be of interest to you, but also you're going to share some of your experiences of what you've been doing in that particular area that will be of interest, hopefully, to many of our members. We also have Victoria Bond. Very pleased to have you, Victoria. You are farming just behind the Penderyn Whiskey Factory, which I know very well from our experience of driving past there. Lovely part of the world in South Wales. I think what's interesting about your particular story is that you've actually gone into direct sales. You produce some of your own meat, but also you decided, I think, that based on the current conditions around uncertainty, around the fact that you just needed to take control more of this particular area of your business. I think you managed to get a grant from a local business route to buy your own machinery and to buy your own transport so that you can actually sell directly. And I think it's been really interesting to look at the other areas that you've diversified into around wood products. You're going to tell us a little bit about that later. But for you, I think it feels that you're safeguarding your business by having much more control over what you can and can't do. What you've also said to us as well, though, is it's not all rosy. It is challenging, and one of the areas in which you've been able to really develop from is some marketing support and to develop new skills. And I think that's another area that we've been trying to highlight as an organisation in the CLA. If you don't have the skills to do something, it doesn't mean to say you can't get them. So I think developing marketing skills has been one of the areas that you've tried to develop as well. And last but not least, we have our senior policy advisor, Fraser McCauley from the Welsh team, who will tell you a bit more about what funding may look like next year. So without further ado, I'm going to pass on to our first speaker. Do send us questions. We'd love to hear what you think. Questions or points on the Q&A button. And Charles, I'm now going to hand over to you and stop sharing, and with a bit of luck, the technology will work.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Good morning, everyone. Let's see if the technology does work, and hopefully it will do. Let's do that. So hopefully you'll all be able to see the screen now. We're talking about farming success beyond Brexit and what will happen after transition. Just to give you a bit of background about myself, I'm the senior economist at the CLA. I've been at the CLA for just under 18 years, and before that I used to work for the NFU, and I've been a consultant for the European Commission as well. So I've got a fair background in terms of how Europe works and what will happen in terms of Brexit. So this presentation will provide the context of what we're looking for, but also give you a flavour of what, as a business, you need to be aware of. And it's very, very important that businesses, when the UK formally comes out of the European Union, those businesses are actually Brexit ready. So if we go to the first slide, hopefully it will work. It may take a bit of time given technology these days. Knew this wasn't going to work. If you just bear with me 1 minute. Derek, can you actually take over? If I stop sharing, can you take over the slides?
Yeah, we'll sort that now, Charles. Yeah. Yes.
Charles, I can do that for you if you want.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing now. Sorry about that, everyone.
No worries, Charles.
Love technology.
Just going on to it now, Charles. Okay. Okay, if we go to the next slide. Thanks, Nigel. So where are we now? We know that we made the historic decision on 23rd of June 2016. The UK public voted to come out of the European Union, but we're now closing in towards the end of 2020. So 4.5 years later, the UK is finally going to leave the European Union. But what this means is that our relationship, obviously, with the EU will change fundamentally. It'll also have a major impact on how we trade. And I think one very, very important point that we need to be very well aware of is that with the withdrawal agreement that was agreed in January this year, the UK will come out of the European single market. It'll also come out of the customs union. Now, what that means is that even if we were to have a deal with the European Union, which we'll talk about in a minute, it means that things will change. And the rules relating to how businesses trade and how they develop in the future will change as well. Next slide, please, Nigel. So, as I said, the negotiations are still ongoing. We believe that we'll have a final decision by the end of this week. Now, we don't know whether that's going to be a deal or a no deal. As I said, even with a deal, it means that things will change. But let's make the assumption that we'll come out of Europe with a no deal. So our trading relationship will fundamentally alter. Now, what I've got on that slide is what I call the 3 T's: trading under WTO rules, tariffs, and trying to find new markets. If we come out with a no deal Brexit, then we essentially trade as other non-EU countries will trade if they do not have an agreement with the EU. Now, what that will mean is that products going into the EU market or going onto the EU market will face tariffs. If we look at lamb, for example, big market for Welsh producers going into the EU market. Without a deal, we could be talking about over 40% tariffs put on certain types or certain cuts of lamb entering the EU market. What that will do is make them uncompetitive, and we'll look at that situation a little later on. But of course, if we don't have the EU market, we're going to have to try and find new markets. That will take time, it will take a lot of effort,
but it's going to be absolutely essential in order to be able to actually move forward in the future. Nigel, next slide, please. So what do we think it's going to mean for Welsh agriculture? Now, we know that there will be a substantial change in the future. What it's very likely to mean is that there could be possible short-term chaos. We're looking at short-term, 12 months, 18 months, longer along the line, but it will lead to disruption of trade flows. And I think the important thing here is that when we talk about trade, we're looking at the impact of how trade actually affects markets, but also how trade will affect the prices that producers in Wales will actually receive in the future. So if there are disruptions to the trade flows, what it will mean is that prices are likely to be unstable in the future, and they're also likely to fall because of tariffs and because of the way the UK will trade with the EU in the future. Again, irrespective of whether we have a trade deal or not, all the indications point to the fact that costs will rise. So raw material prices will rise, input costs will rise, and it's going to be a case of what the prospects are for the short, medium and long term. Next slide, please, Nigel. So in the short term, what do we actually mean? We know it's going to lead to increasing pressure on prices. If we come out of the EU without a deal, then we know that there's going to be less market or less exports of Welsh lamb, for example, going into the EU market. That will mean more domestic product on the Welsh market. If you have more of a product, it will tend to put further pressure on prices. So producers need to think outside of general primary production. They need to look at what other market potential there is, what the other possibilities might be for the future. If we look at the medium term, we know that markets will need to be more resilient. Businesses need to be able to plan well ahead of time. And in terms of medium term, we're looking at 12 months, 12 months to at least 5 years. So it's going to be absolutely vital that businesses are able to plan well ahead. But in the long term, after the first 5 years we come out of the EU, there will be opportunities, and it's absolutely fundamental that those opportunities are exploited, and we'll look at that a little further on. Nigel, next slide, please. Now, what do we think the impact will be on the land market? Now, we know that if there is a no-deal Brexit, or even if there is a deal, it's still going to be the case because we're not part of the single market. There will be pressure put onto prices. We know that there'll be an increase in the amount of product going onto the Welsh market. So it's going to be absolutely vital for producers, for Welsh land producers, to actually look at other export markets. One of the key elements here also is the very fact of branding, and the point that you have Welsh lamb as a brand, as a protected designation of origin or a protected geographic indication. Those two terms are going to be vital as we move forward in the future, because that actually gives market presence, but also allows a producer to actually get added value for their product. We recognize that margins are going to remain tight, certainly in the first 5 years after Brexit. And as we know the current situation we have with COVID-19 and with Brexit, there's going to be a double effect. So the point here is that producers and land managers need to look at other markets, such as the environmental markets, which will become more commonplace as we move forward in the future. And again, you link that to other economic areas or economic sectors. It's very much the case that we're talking about actually getting added value, but through different markets, through the opportunities of diversification, which we'll hear about a little later on. Now, if anybody saw the Andrew Marr interview with the Secretary of State, George Eustace, a couple of weeks ago, he said, well, if you're in the land market, obviously, yes, there may be a negative effect, but it could very well be a case that you switch into beef production. Unfortunately, Secretary of State, it's not quite as simple as that. So it's important for producers, for land managers, to look outside of primary production, to look at other markets, to look at the opportunity to diversify in the future. Next slide, please, Nigel. So we have COVID-19 at the moment. Come the 1st of January 2020, we'll have Brexit, and we know that there will be agricultural policy change. You bring all those three elements together, we have the triple whammy. We need to be able to understand what the potential effects of that triple whammy will be in the months and years to come. Next slide, please, Nigel. So do opportunities exist? As an economist, I have to look at the data. I have to interpret that data. Everybody says, well, at the moment, you're always painting a gloomy picture, only because that's what the data is telling me. But it is going to be a case that opportunities will exist. Businesses will need to plan very, very carefully in order to exploit the market opportunities that will be there. And it won't just be in terms of national markets or international markets. It will be a case that you need to look at local markets as well. One of the key things that we found during the COVID-19 pandemic is the ability of business to actually exploit digital technology. We fully understand that, of course, in Wales, as in other areas of the United Kingdom, digital technology is still very limited. We're pushing the government to make sure that broadband and mobile connectivity is spread out as quickly as possible. That's why the government announced at least £1.2 billion to move forward up to 2025. Businesses have to have, though, the digital skills in order to be able to fully utilize the web. Collaboration and working together is absolutely fundamental. And it's also going to be a case that don't just think of your farm and what your farm does. Think of what your farm actually creates, what kind of farming business you operate, and think outside the box. Think laterally. Look at other opportunities for diversification, because that could be in the future where your main income stream will lie. Next slide, please, Nigel. So I think you've got on one too many, Nigel. That's it. Thank you. So how do Welsh businesses need to be able to be Brexit ready? We fully understand, and everybody understands now, that trade will become more complex. It will be a case that there will be additional costs coming into the supply chain. It may very well be the case that the prices that producers get now in the marketplace may not be the prices that they get in the future. There will be barriers. We know there will be barriers because there could be, and there are likely to be, delays at the ports. It will also be the case that it will take time to understand the changes, but it's absolutely vital that businesses are able to understand very complex changes in certain areas, particularly in terms of importing and exporting. They need to be able to plan ahead and understand the changes. Next slide, please, Nigel. So what is the CLA doing? We're obviously giving advice to our members both before and after transition. What we're saying to members is it's vitally important that they keep up to date, they keep their business plans up to date, and they try and be as resilient and adaptable to change as far as they possibly can. All the information that we're producing for our members is available on the CLA website, and you've got the link there, cla.org.uk/Brexit. Next slide, please, Nigel. So just to bring everything together, the title there, we don't have long, that comes directly from the UK government's PR campaign about Brexit. And we're now on the 30th, we're now at the 30th of November, we have a month to go. We have to recognise that there will be substantial change from the 1st of January next year. If there is a no deal, that will put immense pressure on rural sectors. Remember the 3 T's. Trade will be regulated by the World Trade Organization. There will be tariffs. They will have a major impact on trade. And because of that, try and find new markets for new products. Think laterally, think outside the box. Next slide, please, Nigel. And finally, make it the business as adaptable as possible. By diversifying and actually planning things ahead as far as you possibly can, you will be able to adapt to change. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult, certainly at times, but look at new opportunities, however unusual they may be. You remember, you have land, it's that asset, and that acts as collateral for your ability to be as adaptable and to seek those new opportunities. The changes, as I said, can be complex. Some changes will take time to actually come through the system. So it's absolutely vital that members are as up to date as they possibly can be. For more advice and for the latest advice, go to contact CLA Cymru and also go onto the CLA Brexit Hub website. It's going to be absolutely fundamental for you to gain that advice. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a snapshot and a very general take on what Brexit will mean in the future. Remember, as I said, from an economics point of view, but trying to give you a picture of both the practicalities involved, but also the realities involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. That's really helpful. And we're going to have a real opportunity to get stuck into the detail a little bit later, Charles, when we have our question and answer session. Maureen, could I just bring you in, please? If you could just put your video off so we can all see you and unmute yourself. That's working very well.
Hello.
Much for that. Maureen, your family have been in your beautiful part of Wales for a good many years. You're the 6th generation hill farmer. Yep. Very mixed farm, looking at different opportunities and focusing very much around the environmental things you can do, but also keeping that really strong core part of your business. I just wonder, would you be able to just maybe tell us a little bit about your story and what your farm looks like, and then maybe some of the things that either are keeping you awake at night about Brexit, but maybe where you think the opportunities might be going forward?
Yep, certainly. Well, as you said, I'm 6th generation the hill farmer up not far from the Rhinog Mountains in the middle of Snowdonia, and we're about 999.9 hectares, so just under 1,000 hectares, and the farm itself is rising to about 1,400 feet above sea level, which is fairly high, moderately high. Now the land is it's a mixture of about 600 hectares of heath and moorland, which in today's terms would be classified as a carbon bog and peatland. The different parcels of woodland, mainly oak and native trees. Also there's planted with woodland creation under the Glacier scheme. And I'm hopefully intending to plant a bit more, hopefully in the next few years, hopefully to try and get more going. And then there's around 20 to 15 hectares of fields, hay meadows, silage fields, grazing, 10% of which are classified as the old hay meadows, if you like. The rest of the land, it's rough pasture, it's habitat. There's a northern river boundary and the northeastern river boundary. Now that's under the SSI protection for the freshwater permissals. So the cleanliness of the rivers is quite important around here. Stocking terms, I keep around 700 Welsh mountain ewes because basically they're the only ones that can really survive here. As the twittering farmer would say, the mountains, you can't do much with anything but graze them. And I keep around 160 ewe lambs to continue the breeding. There's about 30 head of cattle, and they're comprising of Limousin Cross and Pedigree Welsh Blacks, which have only just started going in the last 5 to 6 years, something like that. Concentrating more on the Welsh Blacks, bringing the native breed back, and try and increase the herd. And under the elite testing scheme, where you test for Johns, BVD, different type of diseases you get, making sure everything's elite and clear status. For the last 5 to 10 years, the livestock here basically is just management for the land, because you know, it's only livestock that they can do anything. You can't plant, well, you can't plant potatoes in the middle of stones, really, can you? And they're here mainly for the management benefits of the land. The lambs, for me here, I've classified them lately as byproducts, because they don't pay their way. It's the same with the wool. This year, a lot of farmers have burnt it. It's a byproduct, really, unless somebody can change that. But for me, it's the cattle that have been paying their way, basically, because I've started with the Welsh Blacks and utilising them more for breeding bulls, breeding heifers, and sharing elite system, basically. Basically, the environmental and agricultural side is what I've been concentrating on for the past few years now. We've been in the scheme since 1990s, where Tir Cymru started, then you got Tir Cofal, now you got Glastir. And basically my future plans is basically to carry on with that, because it's over 600 hectares of carbon bog, basically, and I can't really do anything with it to try and improve it. Well, you don't want to improve it if you're taking carbon intake, do you? So that's what I'm going, basically, and looking ahead to government payments to see what's going to happen, what they're going to pan out, what they're going to pay. So definitely environmental side is more my line at this moment.
Thanks, Diolch about it, and that's really interesting to hear your story. And there's a real issue now, isn't there, between what we use land for, whether we use it for food production, which you're very used to, or whether we link into the environmental agenda. And the latter is a great thing to do, but at the end of the day, you're running a business and you can't survive on fresh air, albeit maybe beautiful fresh air where you're from.
Yeah.
There's a real issue there, isn't it, how that's going to
fit? That is. Yeah.
Maureen, I'm just going to pause you there if I can, please, and hand over to Victoria. Victoria, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and just a couple of minutes about what you're up to, and then some of the challenges and opportunities maybe for next year.
Okay, thanks, Nigel, and good morning to everybody. I'm on a hill farm in South Wales in the Brecon Beacons, just behind the Penderyn whisky factory, as Nigel mentioned. And historically, we've farmed lamb and beef, but sold it all through market. My partner Gareth is from a long-term farming family. My sister and I introduced ourselves to farming about 12 years ago. We're slightly more innovative than he is, and we have to drag him along kicking and screaming. So in 2018, we thought things aren't working very well for us, you know, without BPS or with a change of BPS and with the impending Brexit. Are we actually going to make any money? Is there any point in this? We need to do something differently. So we decided we would trial selling our meat direct to the public. This took off extremely well, and we developed our farm foods name called Penderyn Farm Foods, hoping that people would recognise the Penderyn brand due to the whisky anyway. And we now have a substantial customer base. In 2019, we decided, because we had some poor market prices for our ewe lambs the previous year, which was very disappointing, that we would put all of our efforts into selling our meat direct to the public. We successfully did this. We sold all of our 100% of our lamb and all of the beef that we had available for that year. The beef business is very in demand, but also takes a lot longer to build up that supply, which we now have in stock. It's taken us a few years to get there with the beef. Further to that, people started asking us, can we come to visit the shop? Well, we don't currently have a shop. Do you have any other produce? So we started sourcing other meats from other farmers and local producers, and we feel like we're helping them to secure an income which otherwise they may not know they had. We now provide pork, and also Christmas turkeys are on the menu for this year. We started then talking to local businesses, the Tynewydd Hotel, the New Inn in Ystafelta, other pubs and restaurants within the local area. Some of them were buying our meat for themselves personally, and we started thinking, right, can we sell more meat to some of these businesses? All of them are interested, but they said you can't sell it to us out the back of your truck. You need to meet food standard regulations. So in that vein, we are luckily within the wind farm area of Pen y Cymoedd, and we applied for a grant. We were successful, and we now have a refrigerated trailer where we can deliver meat at the right temperature, proven to any business or person wherever we're willing to travel. We've even had some customers request us to go to London. We haven't done that yet, but mainly due to COVID. On that commercial side, COVID has slowed us down a little bit, but we do fully intend to use that trailer to build up further business and further certainty of income next year. We came to a point where the only sheep that are going through the market with us are our old ewes, but we've also found a small niche there for some of our sheep are Scotties. They're all native breeds, but they're Scotties. So the Scottie burger has proved to be extremely popular and has flown off the shelves as well. So we're getting double or triple the price that we could get for a ewe by also managing to sell it direct. So we're going to continue in that vein. We also considered what else can we sell off the farm that we would do anyway. We thought about wood, firewood, and then my sister came up with this reindeer. It's been far more lucrative than any bags of firewood could ever be. So it's given us an extra string to our bow this year, and we're going to make them throughout the year next year so they're ready for Christmas, because again, we just can't keep up with demand. We have secured our income. We feel that we are in a good place and have a good enough customer base after 2 years of running this to combat some of the scene setting given by Charles and all of those uncertainties posed by Brexit. However, it's not a simple road. COVID has, thrown a spanner in the works, and also is an extreme amount of time and effort required to build that customer base and to conduct marketing. So if you're not used to that online or digital marketing, or you don't have the facilities because your broadband isn't very good, as mine isn't, it can be quite challenging. However, you need to put yourself in that uncomfortable position sometimes to secure your future business, and you need to do things like this, like put yourself forward speak on a seminar, and we also managed to get onto the BBC Wales News via the CLA and a few other bits and pieces which have helped. So thank you to the CLA for that support.
Thank you, Victoria. It's a really nice story, and I mean we've spent a lot of time looking at the very big picture about how government's going to get a trade deal or not, and how all that's going to look. But quite frankly, for you and indeed our members, it's about very practical solutions, isn't it, and practical things that you can do. And what I'm picking up from you really is that you've thought, right, what can I actually do myself? You've gone out there, you've done what many businesses are good at doing, and actually just come up with a practical solution. You're almost taking back control yourself. So it's really nice to hear that particular story. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to move on to Fraser now, who's going to give us a little bit of an update around what funding will look like next year. Fraser, and tell us a bit more about what members might expect.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Hopefully everyone can hear me, and good morning to everyone. Yes, I'm Fraser Macaulay. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor here at CLA Wales. Prior to this, I worked in the head office in London for 3 years, prior to which I milked cows in different parts of the UK and New Zealand before undertaking a postgrad in agriculture at Reading. So I'm just going to give a quick run through of where Welsh Government are in relation to agricultural policy and the things that we're doing to prepare our members to deal with what's coming on the horizon. Over the past 2 years, Welsh Government published 2 consultations titled Brexit in Our Land and Sustainable Farming in Our Land. These consultations outlined a new system based on the concept of sustainable land management, where farmers would be rewarded for actions they currently do, which provide public benefits in addition to incentivising new actions. The areas covered included increasing biodiversity, habitat creation, improving animal health and welfare, incentivised permissive access, as well as woodland creation and management. It also outlined the idea of farm sustainability reviews, which could be used to determine future farm plans. We're kind of broadly supportive of a move to a more sustainable policy, both in terms of the economics and the environment, and it's important we demonstrate to the taxpayer all the good things farmers and land managers do. While there have been some details from Welsh Government, nothing has been set in stone. We're currently awaiting a Welsh Government white paper set to be published in December of this year, which will provide a basis for an Agriculture Wales bill expected in the new Senate term. This paper will involve a 12-week consultation period where the CLA will be engaging with our members, various branch and national committees, as well as other stakeholders, both from the farming and environmental end, to ensure a submission reflects the needs of the rural economy, particularly in these really challenging times, both in terms of Brexit, which Charles has covered earlier, and the current COVID crisis. We're expecting the white paper to include further details of what could be paid for under the new scheme, as well as how we transition from where we are to a new system. In addition to the white paper, Welsh Government has undertaken a farmer co-design phase, which consisted of virtual workshops and one-to-one interviews, which was to gain a further understanding of the actions that farmers could take and could be paid for under a new scheme. And we're expecting a report from this stage to be published in the coming weeks, and we'll of course summarise and share with you as members. Government has also recently commissioned various academic bodies to conduct an economic impact assessment of the proposals made so far, and this will be looking at things from a farm level, a sector level, as well as a Wales-wide level, and we're expecting this to be published in October of 2021. There's still clearly a really long way to go before a new policy takes over from BPS and RDP within Wales. We're going to be working really hard with officials, members, the other stakeholders to ensure the new policy works for the rural economy, as well as addresses the needs of the public and the environment. Before I finish, I'll just say there is some kind of positivity in the fact that BPS is going to stay the same for 2021, which will hopefully allow some of our members to deal with some of the issues around Brexit and whether a deal is agreed or not. So that's a really quick run through of where we are. We'll be doing future webinars where we'll talk about this in more detail, but hopefully it sets the scene of where we are and will lead to a few questions. Nigel, can I hand back to you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fraser. And could I ask all of our speakers to just come back onto the screen, please? We now move into the Q&A session. We haven't actually had any questions yet from our audience. So if there is anything you'd like to ask, if you can send those through straight away, please. But not to worry, we can kick off with a discussion. So Charles, maybe a quick one for you. As you're eating your Christmas lunch, Charles, with two other families, or however many you might be allowed to have in England, what might you see on the news on the 25th of December in terms of Brexit?
I think you'll basically see the same government message that people need to be ready for Brexit, whether they're traders, whether they're producers, whether they're working in other areas of the rural economy. It will be the same message that the government's tried to pump out for the last 6-7 weeks. I think one of the problems that the government has got, it's not just UK, but the Welsh government as well, is that it's important to get the message across and for people to actually understand the implications and the importance of this. We're moving from a trading scenario, which we have for the last 45, 47 years, to something that we've never experienced. We've never, you could look at COVID. We've never experienced COVID until this year. Next year, we're going to have both COVID and Brexit, or after transition. So we're going to look into a completely different picture than we've ever faced before, and the complications arising from that, if we're not careful, could be very, very negative.
And Charles, we're hearing stories, aren't we, about massive queues of lorries on in Dover and in Kent, but in the Welsh context, because obviously we're a long way away from Dover, what might we see on the 1st of January then? Any predictions possibly about what we might expect?
I think you'll have a great deal of uncertainty. I think it's very, very difficult to actually remove that uncertainty immediately come the 1st of January. It's going to be a case that it will take time to understand. It will take time to evolve a certain picture as to how we move forward. And also, when you talk about lorry parks and whatever at Dover or Felixstowe, remember those goods will come into Wales in any case, and they'll come into other parts of the country. So if it is the case that we're going to have significant delays, then that's going to have, again, an impact on Welsh producers and Welsh traders, because it will increase costs.
Sure. Thanks, Charles. Maureen and Victoria, I've got a couple of things I'm going to ask you, but before we do that, I've got a question from Rachel Chappell. If we could just pick this one up now. There's been talk about a shortfall in money coming from the UK government to Wales for agriculture next year. How confident are we that it will not have an effect on our 2021 support payments? Fraser, I'm going to pass it on to you in a sec, but before I say that, for everybody, I've been to numerous meetings with Welsh Government and the UK Government, and what I've really picked up from the UK Government, which we must all remember is where the money comes from, they do say there's that commitment to support funding until 2024, which is the life of this Parliament. Any more we might want to say on the back of that, Fraser, apart from it's all really slightly uncertain at the moment, isn't it?
No, thanks, Nigel. It's a good question that we're certainly aware of, and we've been discussing internally and with other stakeholders the past couple of days. We've seen correspondence from UK government to the Welsh ministers and other devolved administrations that do guarantee the same level of funding for 2021, as was outlined in the Chancellor's spending review last week. This figure is £337 million. What the question is whether the unspent RDP funds from the previous European funding period of 7-year framework, if that's underspent, and if it is underspent, why have Welsh Government not got the money out the door? But what I would say is there's still a bit of uncertainty around this. I know you're meeting various ministers and officials later today and tomorrow, Nigel, and once we have an update, we'll be sharing it with you as members. I think
thank you, Rachel. We'll certainly pick that up. So do keep the questions coming in. Maybe for you, Maureen and Victoria, possibly in that order, how do you feel that Welsh Government has interacted with farmers outside of the CLA? I mean, what's your sense about the information flow that there's been, and have you had enough information, and have you had everything that you might have had? Maybe you first, Maureen, just a quick answer.
Yeah, there's been keeping a lot of people in the dark, but it's an unknown road as well, isn't it? We haven't got a clue what we're going to get, really. We've had plenty of warnings that we haven't got a clue that what is going to happen. So I've been preparing for the past 3 to 4 years, getting things ready, doing what I need to do, getting things ready for whatever is coming for the future. So yeah, yeah, definitely we could learn a bit more, need to learn and hear a bit more from the Welsh Government about what they are actually going to do.
Sure. I mean, 4.5 years is a long time, isn't it? And it feels to me from people I speak to that people have sort of switched off in a way, just because it is so long and there's so much uncertainty. They are, like you, starting to prepare, but it's been a very long conversation, hasn't it? And obviously nobody expected 4.5 years ago that COVID was going to kick in. So that did another complication. Victoria, any thoughts around the issues that Maureen has just raised, please?
I just think a complete lack of clarity, but no willingness to try and clarify. I think they are in the dark. They are pushing back to central government. But even when, in forums like this, asked questions, they may be willing to attend, but they can give us no information, which, same as Maureen, the reason why we've taken control is because we have no faith that the government can or will give us that confidence at any point that they will look after us. Yeah,
sure. No, that's very interesting. Okay, thanks for that. Just moving on to our next question from Nerys Llewellyn-Jones. How do you think technical breaches of regulation which are brought about by the EU exit will be dealt with? This might be one for you, I think, Fraser. We've had very little time to consider the detail of the impact of this, given the fact that we're still unsure what the exact trade-in agreements will be. And in terms of the new way we run our businesses are still yet to be understood. So Fraser, technical breaches of regulation, how are we going to deal with all that stuff? Is it going to be ignored, swept under the carpet? Is it going to be stricter? How is all that bit going to work, please?
I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. The first part is, I think it could be more related to Charles because it's going to do with the trade deals. The one thing I would say is, Welsh Government and UK Government have committed to ensuring there's no drop in standards, both in terms of the environment and in terms of our health and welfare. So we've had that kind of agreement. How that will be dealt with, I think, is more of a trade concern. So sorry, Charles, it's coming over to you.
Thank you, Fraser. It's a very, very good question, because it leads to this whole issue of equivalence. As we come out of the EU, our rules will change in relation to the European Union. Now, it's the responsibility of the UK government to ensure that those domestic rules are clearly enforced, but also that those people who are affected directly by those rules actually adhere to them. It's going to be a case that with the new internal market, which the government is putting forward, then there will be new regulations coming forward. And if there's a breach of those regulations, they'll actually be dealt with in the same fashion and in the same way that they would have been under EU regulations. The concern that we've got, however, is that if the divergence is too great, and this is one of the big issues that they're negotiating on at the moment, this whole concept of a level playing field, if the divergences are too great, then it makes our trading situation even more complex than it is already.
Absolutely, and it's that point, as you say, Charles, about that level playing field and how will that work, and indeed between Wales and England with different funding mechanisms. In Wales, we're going to have the sustainable farming our land. In England, it's going to be the ELMS route. What we want is to have clarity across the UK, don't we, as well as across the border with Europe and indeed elsewhere. I'm going to move on to our next question. Thank you again, Rachel, for your second question. A question for Victoria, and Rachel, you're not actually that far away, are you, from Victoria's farm as well? So quite nice to hear that link there. But Victoria, could you just tell us maybe a little bit about how much change you've had to make to your farming systems in order to sell from the farm gate?
Yeah, quite big changes, and I think this is where the organisation comes into it. Really, it's how we use our land now. It's very different. Like you say, we would try and fatten lambs to take them to market. We would fatten the cattle to take them to market. Now, to try and spread out the selling of the lambs throughout the year, so we don't sell them all in one bunch over a couple of months. We try to spread that out to meet our customer demand. So it's trying to save the grass for the right time, for the right number of lambs. It's trying to plan ahead, booking in abattoir dates. And the cattle has probably been the most challenging, because we've gone from having 20 head of cattle and selling calves at 6 to 8 months old to keeping 3 years worth of calves. We've now got nearly 60 cattle on the farm, and that's meant massive change. You know, we've got new sheds being built, but to try and maintain all of these animals in what's a much smaller farm than the Morians is 90 hectares. We're still quite a large farm for our area, but it's still significant changes. And dragging, like I say, the main farmer, my partner, along that journey has been one of the biggest challenges to get them to change those farming methods. But yeah, not easy, and you know, lots of planning and organisation required.
I mean, Victoria, change is very hard, isn't it? I think for some businesses where you can change rapidly, possibly in the IT sector or wherever, it's relatively not easy, but it's much quicker to do that. With a farming system where, you know, it does take a long time, doesn't it, to turn things around. Trying to get a grip on what your short-term and medium-term future might look like is quite challenging, and therefore, how do you respond to that? But I think you're absolutely right. I think change and uncertainty are the key words at the moment, and we do indeed need more clarity around lots of things in relation to Brexit, but also in relation to the other systems, and we just don't have it at the moment.
Nigel,
Charles, yeah.
Just add to that. I think what Victoria's emphasised and underlined is the need for planning, and what's absolutely crucial is that businesses plan properly. Now, you know, we've got evidence that 70% of businesses, not just in the UK, but in Europe as well, have no business plans. Now, if you're in that kind of situation, then it's hardly surprising that problems will arise. What is absolutely crucial is that you think through a business plan and you actually implement it. And that's where, as I said before, adaptability is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. Fraser, I think you wanted to come in quickly on that point.
Yeah, well, it's kind of agreeing with what Charles has just said, but I suppose it's probably also a point to kind of future webinars that we're likely to undertake in the coming year, and about the need for additional policy, not just agriculture and land use policy. So I know there's a big piece of work going on within our team on the planning system and some of the things that Victoria's outlined, such as, you know, the need for change of use building, etc., will need a kind of sympathetic planning system. So I just thought it's quite important to make that point. Thanks.
I mean, Victoria, you spoke about some of the different skills that you were trying to get around marketing and so on. Have you found that there's been much access to support in that particular area, either training or funding for a particular course you want to go on? I mean, has that worked well, or is there anything that anybody else could learn from that?
I think you need to look maybe outside of just the farming support. So Business Wales has a lot of support, and luckily for me, my sister, so one of Rachel's questions was, if this was fully costed, will it still be viable? Well, I think that was the reason why we kind of changed to this system anyway, because the old way of farming, the traditional way, wasn't viable, especially with the risk to single farm payment. My sister works in a digital inclusion business for the Wales Co-op, and they actually support people who are like farmers who may not have that much digital experience, and they want to stop them getting left behind. So I'm just very lucky to have her on board. But there is access to courses. You need to look, I think, wider than the farming world to get those.
So I think that the key thing that you're saying there, Victoria, is around diversification, isn't it? Trying to do something a bit different from your core business. Maureen, any thoughts on what other things you might want to do in terms of that agenda? I mean, you've got a very large holding for Wales, so there's a lot of scope to do different things. But are there any things that maybe more generally we could share with some of our guests this morning about what they might like to try?
Well, there's plenty of opportunity to diversify, and well, as you know, the key to everything is basically pushing yourself and pushing your business and showing what you got. I mean, Wales is a big area with a lot of quality. There's plenty of fresh air, plenty of fields, plenty of food. I mean, you know, you got to put yourself out there, but you've got to benefit as well from available grants. Use what you can, get what you need. I mean, the first thing I was taught is basically you've got to have a vision. You've got to have plenty of information, and you've got to work at it. So you've got to take advantage of as much as you can, really.
I think you're right. And one thing we're not short of in Wales, as you say, is beautiful scenery, beautiful countryside. And if you can really benefit from that can make a big difference. I mean, just moving things slightly in a different direction in terms of the tourism side, maybe, or encouraging more people onto your land. You know, we did see, didn't we, after COVID, enormous numbers of people flocking into the countryside, and there were some issues with that. Where do you both, that's Victoria and Maureen, stand around having more people in the countryside, and what are the key messages that we want to put out to the broader public that aren't from the countryside coming into our areas? And I suppose the last question, how can you benefit from that financially?
Victoria first.
So as part of our business planning, diversification into the tourism industry is one of our considerations. We've got the new zip wire coming to Rigos, which is not far, a mile or two down the road. And there's huge opportunity to have people stay here, either on a campsite or by converting old buildings. We've been put off because we're in the national park in Brecon Beacons, and they are notoriously difficult with planning permission. So we will do it at some point, but we need to gather the energy to look at that option in more detail.
Maureen?
Yeah, similar here as well. We're in the middle of the National Snowdonia National Park. Planning can be very difficult with a lot of things, but I've always been open to anybody who wants to walk the land, get fresh air, go see the scenery, enjoy yourselves. I mean, being in a city locked up, you got to go out and see the world. I mean, COVID now, you can't travel half as much. If people are going to stay at home, travel local, keep local, you got to be prepared for them. There's a lot around here who've diversified by turning their barns into holiday homes, campsites. There's the caravan sites and plenty of, there's the pods as well that you can stay in as well, glamping basically. So yeah, I'm always open and always welcoming anybody who wants to come here. If they respect the land and respect the people that have managed it, we'll respect them, and they'll gladly can come and have a look.
Thanks, Maureen. I think it's that point about respecting the land, isn't it? People are welcome to come as long as they, use the footpaths and do all the responsible things that you'd expect them to do. So we're just coming close to the end of the seminar. I can't see any more questions. We've got time probably for a very quick one if somebody would like to post something. But if one doesn't appear, I'm just thinking for you, Victoria, and indeed you, Maureen, if there was one or two things that you would like the minister to do, what might that be, Victoria? I think you mentioned about planning, but what would be one or two things you'd ask us, and a person then within either Welsh government or a public body who could actually make a difference? What would you really like them to do that would help your business, Victoria?
Simplify the planning process and encourage business development within the national park, as they do in other parts of the world. I can't see why we can't be like New Zealand and really thrive on tourism, but that needs promotion. It needs to be easier. And please give me good broadband. That's my two asks. That's
fabulous. Thank you. Maureen, what about you?
I just asked them basically to look after those who look after them. I mean, we've been looking after the land for God knows how many centuries. We supply the food, we supply the scenery, we supply the holidays for people. If they can look after us, we'll look after them.
Thank you, Maureen. And just to put you, Fraser, and you, Charles, on the spot as well then. So you wake up on January the 1st, maybe you've had a couple of drinks the night before. What do you think it might look like by the time you get up on the 1st of January when you're tucking into a bacon roll or a veggie burger or whatever you might be eating? What do you think it's going to look like? Fraser?
Shall I go first, Charles?
Yeah. Go, Fraser.
I'm going to be very optimistic, and I'm going to say that we agreed a deal which will be as good as possible in the short time remaining, and there'll be as little disruption for farmers as possible, notwithstanding the comments made in Charles's presentation.
Good to see you thinking about work, Fraser, on your day off. So thank you for that. You're not going to get a pay rise, but thank you very much for thinking about that. And Charles, what's life going to look like for you on the 1st of January then, do you think?
Well, the pubs aren't open, so I can't go down the pub, and that's out of the question. I think it's going to be a case that we have to wait and see what the reaction is going to be. We need to get people as ready as possible come 1st of January. It's going to be a long haul, and we need to recognise it's going to be a long haul. But as I said before, and Victoria and Maureen have highlighted this, there are opportunities out there. It's not a case of just being pessimistic. It's a case of being realistic, of rolling your sleeves up, actually getting on with the job at hand, making sure that you plan as positively as possible. There will be challenges, there will be barriers, but those barriers and challenges are there to be resolved. And look at it like this. I can't believe that 2021 is going to be anywhere near as difficult as 2020 has been.
Thank you, Charles. I'm just conscious of time. We've just gone 1 or 2 minutes after midday, so I'm going to draw the workshop to a close. No more questions from anybody. Can I thank all of our speakers, Victoria Bond, Maureen Jones, Charles Trotman and Fraser Macaulay. We've gone through a lot in an hour, and hopefully for all of our guests that are listening in today, that provides a bit more clarity. The CLA is there for all of you. We've got our Brexit hub. We're going to be carrying on doing briefings, press releases, pushing things out on our e-news, sending out written material. Whatever we need to do, we're going to be doing that in the run-up to the 1st of January. So if there's any questions that you've got or any help that you might need, do get in touch via the normal routes. Thank you all for listening. Please keep positive. I think there's lots of opportunities out there as long as you're able to come up with some good solutions. So good luck to you all, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr.